Yay, and welcome everybody. Hello and welcome to my channel, Turning Readers into Writers. I hope you're all well. Another fabulous interview this week, and this week it's with Karen E Osborne, who is she writes women's fiction and thrillers as well, and we're going to be delving into her stories. So welcome, Karen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
A pleasure. So Karen E Osborne is an award-winning and Amazon Kindle best-selling author of 4 women's fiction suspense novels. Her author life followed a career traveling the world as a consultant, trainer, and motivational speaker. True Grace is her latest project, an historical fiction inspired by real people and events set in 1924 during the Roaring Twenties and Harlem Renaissance. Black Rose Writing, launch date September the 7th, 2023. So it's coming. Not only is she a prolific writer, but Karen also hosts a weekly video podcast called What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? So I'm intrigued to learn more about your journey, Karen, but I just have to start with something that is just tickled me pink. It did when I was reading the about section on your website, and you said that you used to submit book reports on fiction you had created in your head. You'd made up these books and you would write a book report on them, giving them the titles and making up the authors. And what I particularly love is that you said nobody cottons on, nobody realized you'd made them all up. I think that's fabulous. Is that because you didn't want to read the books that they had given you, or you ran out of time, or just a chance to use your own creativity?
I read as many books as I possibly could. Our library would only allow you to take out 7 books a week. And I would take out 7 books every single week, and I would read them all and then have to wait till the end of the week. And so I'd start making up stories in between the time, like on Wednesday, to Friday, where I could take out some more books. And so I just decided to just submit one as a book report. And I even had an ISBN number. I noticed that all the books had to have those, and the publication date, all those things. And I submitted my first one, and the teacher said, "Oh my goodness, I don't know this author, but this is such a lovely story. Thank you for introducing us to this, Karen." So then I thought, well, why not do it again? Because I had all these books in my head. So
I think that feels like your entrepreneurial spirit, even at an early age. You were creating products and services for people that didn't yet know they needed it. That seems to be what sort of happened in your professional life. You set up the Osborne Group and had your own business, and I guess that's what you were doing when, putting the writing aside. Is that what happened? Because you've said in your bio that you didn't start writing, or you published your first book at 69.
I know. Yep. I had a very busy career. I had a wonderful career, first in higher education, and then as president of the Osborne Group. And it was busy. My husband and I, we had a business we were running. We had family. We were involved in many volunteer activities,
Mm-hmm.
and so writing just didn't happen. Again, I always loved it. I always wanted to do it. And then these 2 women started talking to me in my head, and they just insisted that I write their story. And so my first book, Getting It Right, I wrote on airplanes, in Delta lounges, in hotel rooms. I'm driving, and they're talking to me as I'm driving to a client, flying to a client. And then the bug got me back. Then I was off and running.
So you were writing this while you were still working. This isn't something that you did in retirement. No. Fantastic. And I think that exemplifies so well that if we want to write a story, if our characters are coming to us, we've got to find a way to make that space, to make that time, even if it is just while you're waiting for a plane or waiting at the dentist. Just that it's up to us to take control of that and be the agents for our own future, and grab those opportunities when we can.
I agree with you 100%. My son, who is also a writer, and and he runs the Osborne. He owns the Osborne Group now, the company that we built. and he's traveling the world, and he has a wife and children, and he's so busy, but he commits himself to write at least 15 minutes every day.
Mhm.
That's his promise to his creative self. And so, his short stories are coming out in various magazines, and it's not everybody can write 15 minutes every day, but not everybody can spend a whole day. People have lives. So finding your rhythm, whatever your rhythm is, but committing to it, I think, is so important.
Absolutely. And so are you, if your son's taken over, are you retired now? And does that mean that you get to write for more hours of the day now?
I do. So I still take a gig here and there, speaking engagement here and there. I have 2 coming up, and I do it asking them to please let me also sell my novels while I'm there. So I'm there about something totally different. I'm there helping not-for-profits. But then they say, okay, Karen, you could have a table outside the door. So I put my books outside my door. But yes, so now I have much more time to write. I'm also, though, a serial volunteer. So my volunteer responsibilities are very substantial,
Mhm.
and I give them my all. And then I'm a serial and serious grandma, and so I have to give my attention to my babies, all my babies. And then my writing is, and of course, married 54 years.
Wow.
So got to be good to my man. So, so,
No.
so all my time writing, not exactly, but I have a lot more time to write.
But I certainly hear this, from people who think, do you know what, I'm going to wait till I retire, then I'm going to write the book. And my kind of comeback to that is always, I don't know any retiree who sits around with all this time to spend doing their writing. It's as busy a period of life as any other. And so I always kind of say to people, don't wait for that, because you will be busy when you're retired, as busy as you are as a working person.
And also, we're not guaranteed anything. So putting off dreams, people often ask me, they say, oh, Karen, like what's on your bucket list? And this is absolutely the truth. I don't have a bucket list because I lived, I traveled, we found time to do the things that gave us joy every step of the way. So it's not like I don't still want to learn new things, and I don't still, but it's not a bucket list want.
Mhm.
It's not like, oh, well, when I have time, when I reach this age, then I will. You don't know what's going to happen. And so do it now. Do it, find a way. If it's a passion.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's lovely. That really gladdens my heart to hear you say that you've done much of the things that you wanted to do, and everything on top of that, it sounds like, hey, it's a bonus. That's great, but we've done
Yes.
what we wanted. Well,
Yes.
let's go on and talk about your book. So Reckonings was the book that came out last, I believe, and I was having a look at this book, and I love the opening to this. So even just that first section, I just thought, wow, this is a masterclass on how you show a very busy home and you introduce many characters within a short space of time, but keeping it clear and keeping it concise as to who is who, what their role is in the family, where they are in that family, and all done, as I say, very concisely and with great clarity. I just thought this was wonderful, and I want to know the secret. How do you work with a big cast like that and keep it so unmuddied? Did you, when you're thinking about a scene where there's a big cast like that, do you plan it out in your head? Or do you go with the flow and see what comes when it comes?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Yes, I go with the flow, and then I go back. I'm not a planner. So I am a planner in the rest of my life, but I'm not a planner for my novels. So and a character is strong, and Roxy was strong. And then actually the beginning changed a bit after I sent it to my beta readers,
Ah.
because my son said to me, he's one of my best beta readers, and he said to me, Mom, you didn't ground us yet. you need to ground us. We need to know this family a little bit before you jump into all that's going wrong in her life.
Mhm.
And so then I went back. I took his suggestion to heart. And so I did plan that beginning based on a beta reader saying, wait a minute, I don't know her well enough. So I had to figure out ways that you could know her, that you could see that she was a good person,
Mhm.
because she does get annoying after a while. You know, Roxy just keeps making one bad decision after another. And I was listening to the audiobook version of it after, it had been produced. And I'm walking, I exercise when I listen to audiobooks. And so I'm on my treadmill listening to Reckonings. And I'm thinking, Roxy, get a grip. Listen to Dallas. Why don't you listen to Dallas, our best friend?
Well, you've done a fantastic job in that, because we very, very quickly, we know that she's a working mother with lots of children, about to be a grandmother, that there's also the 2 dogs in the mix as well. It's like, oh my goodness, and all in this tiny place. But what I particularly loved is that we understand right away that she's got big dreams, and we know what those dreams are, and she believes in herself, and even when the rest of the family don't, she has the vision, she sees it, she knows what is possible, whether she achieves it or not. At the beginning, that's where she's at, that's what she wants, and it's on the page, it's clear. Now we know what she's going for, and we can root for her. So I think that was just fantastically done. But tell us about the book, tell us about the inspiration behind it, and who would enjoy this story?
So I'm very pleased that men and women enjoy my books. I have so many male readers that write me, that review, because I think that I write books about women,
Mhm.
but they're not necessarily just for women. But they're always strong, flawed women, and that's my motivation, to write strong, flawed women. And I write an awful lot about trauma. I realized, as we're going to talk about True Grace, but of my 4 books, 3 of them are about serious trauma. and and but the 5th one that I'm working on now isn't. So, but I find, so when Getting It Right, let me just give you an example. When Getting It Right came out, and it was before the pandemic, and so I had lots and lots of talking engagements, and every single one, everyone, somebody waited till the end, till everybody was gone, and I was packing up, to come up to me and say, it happened to me. It happened to me too. And that really, that touched my heart, that my book and the story and the characters gave somebody the courage
Mhm.
to say. This one woman, she was in her 70s, and she said to me, I've never said this aloud to anybody before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I just thought that was powerful and wonderful. So every time I think, oh, Karen, are you writing another trauma book? And then and then I remember how many people have suffered and have had those experiences. And
Mhm.
the other thing that I wanted to do is make sure that the book wasn't about trauma. It was about people who suffered from trauma living and overcoming and finding a way. And, I didn't want it to be about the trauma itself.
Mhm.
I wanted it to be about the impact
Mhm.
and how people overcome or don't.
Mhm. So what does Roxy, what's her journey in Reckonings? She's does she, I don't want to give the game away, but she's at the beginning, we know that she's a writer as well as her day job, and she's looking to get, find a way out of it. And so what kind of things, what
So,
challenges does she encounter along the way?
yeah. So Roxy is 36, as you said, 4 children, 2 rescue dogs, a husband that she loves and who loves her, but she is unhappy. She feels old. She feels like her dreams have gotten smaller and smaller, but she's written this play. And the play is coming out in 10 days as the story opens. Her daughter is pregnant. Her daughter won't tell her who the father is. And her daughter has decided to give the baby up. And Roxy's mother left her when she was 12. So Roxy is very torn. I can't afford to raise another child, but I remember what it was like to be abandoned by my mother.
Mhm.
This play is going to somehow solve all my problems, like a play could solve all your problems, but that's what she truly believes, that the play's going to make it to Broadway and her life is going to be, going to be better. And then in the opening scene, that's where we find Roxy with 10 days. The man who raped her 17 years earlier and returns to town and believes that Roxy's oldest daughter, who is pregnant and 17, so he raped her 18 years ago, that she is his daughter. And he's not been able to have children of his own. But he knows he can. It's not his fault because he has this child. And unfortunately, Roxy never told her husband and never told her daughter
So she'd been
about the
living
rape.
with it all that time.
And, her friend Dallas says to her, because the play that she writes about, the play is about a rape, and it's about what happened to Roxy. And her Dallas says, don't you think they're all going to figure it out when they see the play's opening in 10 days, Roxy? You have to do something. You have to. So Spider is back in town causing havoc and causing trouble, and he's going to save the town, and he's going to save her theater, and her best friend, childhood friend, is going to star in it, but her friend is not showing up. And Roxy's just got a lot going on. And the whole story takes place in 10 days.
Okay. Oh, I love that. So it's a really tight time frame. Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
I think it's really telling as well that you chose the age that you chose for Roxy, because I think that is a period of time that many of us do. It's like the middle age crisis has come earlier now. And I certainly went through this in my 30s, and I know other people who have as well. That kind of, is this it? Is this all is this all life has to offer? I had this promise that everything was going to be magical, and it's not the magic I thought it was going to be. So I think that's really interesting you chose that age for her.
Yeah. It's a time for some people, so many people and so many women, you're juggling children and career, and that is just hard. And there's also for Roxy's husband, there's a father that's not very nice. And so he's trying to be a good father. He doesn't have such a good father.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole family she thinks the whole family is depending on her to save them all in her mind.
Yeah.
She wants to get them a house, and she's trying to, but her family accuses her. Everything isn't about you, Mom. Everything isn't always about you. So she's taken on all of this and kept them away from her secrets and away from her real plans. And she has a lot to learn as the story progresses.
Yeah.
And everybody should have a best friend like Dallas. Dallas is her best friend, and she is so cool and hip and wise but protective and loyal. And so everybody needs a Dallas in their life. I have a Dallas in my life.
Oh, regarding the kind of motherhood side of it, I see a lot of Roxy being reflected back at me, and that feeling, that pressure to raise these humans and be responsible for all of their decisions that they make in life. And we take every bad decision they make is our fault, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Well, it's not funny, but it's funny that I recognize it and see it. So it shows it's a universality that you're talking about, that most women will recognize this. Yeah. Oh, so a definite must for everybody to go and read. But I know that you wanted to particularly talk about your new book that is coming out. Yay! So True Grace is out later this year. Do tell us about the inspiration behind the story and a little bit about it.
Yeah, so my grandmother was an extraordinary woman. And in 1924, she was an immigrant. She's an immigrant, mixed race woman who came to New York, Harlem's New York, via Jamaica, the West Indies, via England, via the Congo. So in her very short life, she's only, when the story opens, she's 27. She's the mother of 5. She's been married since she was 13 years old.
Wow.
And she had her first baby at 14, and her next baby at 15, and her next baby at 16. So she herself had lived great trauma, but she's made a life for herself. As the story opens, you can see that she's made a good life for herself. She's married, her kids, they got the family to New York. They live in a lovely apartment in Harlem. And this Saturday, she comes home and finds her husband on top of her daughter, their daughter, who's 13. And this really happened to my grandmother. And I opened the 1925 census and saw what had happened to the family. And my eyes just filled up, and I said, I have to write this story. I have to write this story. So I started the story. So that it opens, that's the opening where we find Grace. And the story is about how she loses her family and gets her family back. How she overcomes this terrible, so many things thrown at her: misogyny, racism. They just told her, the courts told her, the lawyers told her, everybody's telling her what not to do and what to do. And she's brave and courageous. But I couldn't tell it as a memoir. I couldn't tell it as nonfiction because I don't know everything. She's not here for me to ask her what happened. And so I just have the things that she told me, and I have some letters and things like that. So I thought, well, I just have to make this up. And I'm good at that. So I made up the rest. So this is fiction inspired by real people and real events. And how I do know that she gets her family back. I do know, because there she was, and there they all were, and I was raised with my aunties and uncles and cousins and everything. But how that happened. So this one takes place, all my books up until this one take place in 2 weeks. Every book, it's a 2-week. This one takes place over 6 months, but it's still a fast, short chapters, fast paced. So I love this. And you can see, your viewers can see the cover, which is so magnificent, and that they did for me, my publisher did for me, and the little descriptor of the book on my Facebook page and on my Instagram page and on my Facebook and Instagram.
I'll be sure to link to those, yes.
And Twitter, but it's really quite beautiful, but I don't physically have it.
Not yet.
Yes.
Wow. So just a lot going on for your grandmother, and another story of very, very strong women, as you say. And I love family history myself. I've done a lot of it myself in my own family, and women have had to be so strong over the years. And actually, I think about my own grandmother, who raised 7 children on very little as well, and also was an immigrant, and having to contend with language as well, and all of those things. It takes resilience, fortitude, courage, a great deal of savvy as well to kind of negotiate the outside world and keep a family together. So I can imagine that there's lots of twists and turns, and another kind of big cast as well. Big
cast, good best friend. I so believe in I like writing stories about family, and I like writing stories about the extended family. Those people in your life who just show up at the right time, the angels that that are there just at the right moment, that keep us going, that give us that, just when we're at our, I can't go any further. There is somebody that comes and says, but you can.
I
And
feel a
then
swelling in my heart already.
yeah, I so believe, and I've benefited from all those angels in my life. I can see at all the moments of my own personal trauma and my growth, I know just who that angel was that came and opened, turned on the lights and said, get out of bed, get out of bed.
And
This
so
isn't the solution.
yeah. And we sometimes we need a little bit of tough love in that way, don't we? Just to shake us out of ourselves and, okay, I've got to carry on.
Going.
Yeah, yay. And so your novels, are they generally contemporary and this is your first historical?
Yes. And there's a reason. I hate research. I like to make things up. And I love reading historical fiction. And I so admire the details, the things that really put you in the setting. Oh my goodness, that is so much, hats off to you, historical book writers, because like, oh, what would a shopping cart have looked like in 1924? Let me go and see oh, yes, aluminum existed, but they weren't making shopping carts out of aluminum. I mean, all that, writing, and then having to stop. And I know there's some people who research first, and then they write, but I did both, as I'm going and I describe something and I think, I gotta go find a picture of that, and go see. So it was fun, but I don't think I'm ever going to do it again.
But it must have been a fun period as well, because the Roaring Twenties generally, we think of now being a fun time. But am I right in thinking that Harlem at that time was just vibrant and alive, and everything was going on? Music, dance halls.
It was the Harlem Renaissance, and speakeasies and all of, salons. I can remember my grandmother telling me about the salons she used to go to, where you'd get to sit and listen to a poet, and, that poet turned out to be somebody famous, or you went and heard for the first time a jazz player. And then I happened to know that, Duke Ellington became, but she saw him when he was just getting started and, in a little local club. But again, she was a mom and trying to keep her family together, and she then had to earn a living, and it was, all of this vibrancy was going around her, and she couldn't benefit from it, because she had to feed 5 people and somehow manage a life. So it's but there's the speakeasy, and there's parades, and then all of the different voices. I'm so excited. It'll also be a audiobook, as is Reckonings. Reckonings is also an audiobook. And the woman who's going to read it for me, she's working on her Jamaican accent. She says she's got the British and she's got the Southern, but she says, but I'm studying up and practicing my Jamaican, because we've got all 3 accents going.
Wow, good for her. I'm impressed. And Jamaican, I think, is quite a hard accent. I find it a hard one anyway.
Yes, so she's practicing, she told me. She's an actor and voice actor. And so, because Grace speaks with a British accent, but her best friend Beryl speaks with a Jamaican accent. Okay. And then her love interest speaks with a Southern accent. So
whole mix.
We got a lot going on.
There is a lot going on, and and presumably your actress is going to have to do the different accents within the same scene as well. So that's going to be, I can't wait.
Yeah, she did Reckonings really well. She really differentiated between the narrator, Roxy, and she gave me little snippets of each voice. Did I get it? Am I on the right track? So I'm excited for her to do.
Tell us about that process. So for any of our author listeners who are considering or would like to have their novel turned into an audiobook, how did you find the process? How did it go from start to finish, and how much say did you have in who the narrator was?
Well, fortunately, my publisher, Black Rose Writing, said to me that if I wanted to find my own narrator and she was willing to work under his contract, that he was fine with it. So I put out feelers, I wrote different people I knew, and I got about 5 takers. And then we gathered all of our beta readers on Zoom. So 2 live in Australia, and 1 lives in California, and the other one then in New York. And so I got everybody on Zoom, and then I played each audition, 10-minute audition, and we all vote. I gave them a sheet to check off, voice and, different things, acting, and then we discussed it. And so Debbie Tinsley came out the winner of the majority, not 100%, but the majority all agreed she was the one. So it was so much fun. So I went back to her for this one and I said, do you think, are you interested? And she said, oh, yes. So I'm excited that she wants to do it. But the other way is that many, many authors, the publisher just tells you this is the voice actor. Okay. But I'm very, very grateful that Black Rose Writing, Reagan Roge he's just so good to his authors. He's so willing, so he said, sure, Karen, if that's the way you want to do it.
Go for it. Yay.
Go for it. So, yeah. And he was excited when I told him that she was going to do the next one. He wrote back and said, great, glad to, be working with us. So he's very supportive.
I'm a big audio listener, and it's funny. I think that choosing the right narrator is vital, because I'm sure I'm not alone in this now. If I find a narrator I like, I search for them and what they've narrated, and I'll go and listen to something that sounds good that they've narrated, because I really like it. And then also, if I'm listening to a series, I always go for the one that's got the same narrator. So if I find someone that I resonate with and who, for me, epitomizes the characters in the book.
Character, yes.
I'm hooked. That's me. I'm in. So you are a prolific writer, and you've mentioned that you're already started the next one. But within your being a grandmother, volunteering, writing, you also host a podcast as well called What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? So what prompted you to add this extra thing into the mix of your already busy week?
Yeah, so we're 2 years old, and it was the pandemic, and I didn't have any speaking engagements, and I knew that all of my writer friends didn't have any speaking engagements because we were in the pandemic. So I thought, well, maybe if I started something, I could help my writer friends, and and it would be fun. And so I just started, and now it's wonderful. First of all, I didn't know I had a show until somebody wrote me and said, could I be on your show? I thought, oh, I have a show. And then some publicists started approaching me that they had pitching me. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is very exciting. And my answer is always yes. You don't have to pitch me, just write me. I'm happy to I don't put any one genre on. And you meet so many people, like I'm meeting you. You meet the coolest people. Your to read pile gets enormous, because people start talking to you about their books, and you're like, oh my gosh, that sounds like the best book ever. I want to read that. And so it's just been fun, and it's been great. It has really been great. I have been challenged in finding a nice balance of people of color. I would like to have so many more, and I reach out and ask and look. I've approached because I want different races and ethnic. I want all of us to be represented. Like I only have one writer so far who was from India. I only have one Latina. It's like, come on, you're 2 years old, Karen. We got to fix this. So I've been really trying to make offers to and let people know. And so thank you for letting me say it on your show.
No, gladly. So if anyone's listening who has a book and wants to go on your show, they just need to drop you a line.
Just drop me a line. I'm writer Karen E Osborne at gmail.com. You can find me on my Facebook page. Karen E Osborne, author. You got to remember the E, because there's another writer, Karen Osborne, and she's very prolific. I tried to get her to come on my show, but she ignored me. So I'm Karen E Osborne, author on Facebook. I'm Karen E Osborne on Twitter. Same thing on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. So I'm finding that really interesting because I have also had difficulty finding authors to come in and talk to me, or different, authors of color to come in and talk to me. I also host a summit every year, and I'm always looking for a more mixed a panel of people, and I do struggle to do that. And I've always thought, oh, it must be the circles in which I move, and I'm just not meeting different people. So that is really interesting to me, that you're also having the same challenges. We know that there are Black, Asian, and people of all different descriptions writing. So why do you think it's kind of that we're struggling so much?
I think I have to look at the groups that I join. When I look at the organizations that I belong to, I think I have to find those organizations that have been designed for people of color, where they're the majority. Mm-hmm. I tend to do things that are mixed. I tend not to, just want to be with any one kind of people, but I think I'm going to have to make a greater effort to join, or to find and join organizations that have that are designed for people of color. Mm-hmm. I was speaking to an Indian author, and I asked her that. I said, do you feel alone as a writer? And she said, no, we stick together. We know each other. We support each other. And I thought, yeah. And then I was speaking to a woman who's African-American, a Black woman, American. And she said, well, no, because I have my circle of writers, but these are small circles, and if you're not part of it. So
yeah.
Emma and I are both saying, raise your hand, we want you. Yeah. We want to meet you. We care about you.
Yes, 100%. Okay, good. I feel a little bit better about that then, that it's not just me that's looking in the wrong places or not having trouble with that. Well, listen, I have 2 questions left to ask you. Yes. One is, what are you reading? And the other is, what are you writing?
So my new book is a murder mystery. I don't have a name for it yet, but I'm going back to Tangled Lies was my first murder mystery. So I'm going back to a murder mystery. And so that's what I'm writing. And what I am listening to is I'm listening to a romance novel. and it's called Night Work by Nora Roberts. And I really admire her. She writes fantasy, she writes magic, she writes romance, she writes suspense. She's really I remember kind of like, oh, Nora Roberts, when I first in romance, but I am so hooked and admire her a lot. And then my next book up is S.A. Cosby's new book, who I'd love to have on my show. If you are listening, S.A. Cosby, I would love, love, love to interview you. He wrote Blacktop. Oh my goodness, I'm just blanking. He has four amazing books out. And his newest one is my next up book. And I'm so embarrassed, S.A. Cosby, that I am forgetting the name.
It happens.
But I admire you immensely. He's so good. You know what he does that I don't find a lot of male writers do? He writes his male characters as full, complete, feeling, thinking. The way that we write women, that's how he writes his men. They're whole, complete people, flawed. So you're rooting for them as opposed to being 100% plot driven.
Right.
Even though he writes very gripping tales and you're on the edge of your seat all the time, it's because you know this guy, you know the protagonist, and you care about this protagonist, which I think is something that I don't find a lot of action writers, male action writers do.
So I've always thought, you know how we've got the category of women's fiction, and it's quite contentious. Some people like it, some people don't. I actually do quite like the category women's fiction, because for me, I know then that what that type of story is going to be. But I often think we should have men's fiction as well, that is more about the emotional side and the kind of day-to-day life of being a husband, being a father, being an employee, and that kind of thing, where the characters are kind of more character driven and more rounded, as you say, rather than necessarily being the all-round hero action adventure type story. But I think I'm in the minority of that, but I think why not?
I'm with you. And if you've not read S.A. Cosby, he's really, that's who he is. Blacktop Wasteland was the first book when I met him. He's written books before then. I was just going to go look on my Kindle real fast, but you just know this guy and you care about him and you're worried for him on the first page. That's pretty good.
Yes, it is. I'll try and tag him and see if we can get him onto our shows.
Maybe he'll let both of us interview him.
Yes, let's hope. Listen, Karen, it's been a joy getting to know you and learning more about you and your work. And we've got some lovely crossover between the two of us. So I've particularly enjoyed that as well. So thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you. And I hope you will be mine.
I'd love to. Thank you.